where it says Avihai. Okay, behind us, that's the outpost of Abigail. That's a little outpost. What you see there, the red roof, that's Mahon. That's one of the settlements that was established here in the 80s. Behind it, on the horizon, you can see Carmel. That's the first settlement that we saw today. And here on the hilltop, these two antennas, that's another outpost, a quite infamous one. I'm going to tell you a bit about it. That's Mahon Farm, or Chavat Mahon. And here in the valley, that's a Palestinian village called Tuani, or Khir Bet El Tuani. Now, I mentioned in the beginning this triangle of policies, behavior of soldiers and settlers. Now, we spoke quite a lot about the policies of separation and all those systems that were created in order to transfer land from the Palestinians into Israeli hands. We spoke about the behavior of the soldier on the ground, that in the end you're not really prepared, and that a big part of it, in the end, of what happens here comes from the fact that you're a 19-year-old with a lot of power in his hands and a lot of gray area, that when it comes to what you're allowed or banned to do. And then there are the settlers. And when I'm talking about the settlers, I want to start with a distinction between the majority of settlers and the people that live on outposts like this. And I'm making this distinction because I want to make it very clear that the story here is about the policy, about how Israel controls this. I don't want you to come back from this tour feeling that, you know, it's all the blame of the settlers or whatever. They're just a part of this story in the end. So, as I mentioned before, you have almost 500,000 Israelis living, you know, over the green line. Most of them live here as a result of a government policy. The government was and still is encouraging Israelis to come and live over the green line. The land here is subsidized, the government bus lines are subsidized, you get tax benefits if you live in an outpost. So for example, during the early 90s, when quite a lot of Israelis immigrated, you know, from former Soviet Union into Israel, and they were faced with an option. You could live in a two-room apartment in a suburb of Tel Aviv and, you know, suffer for mortgage for your entire life. Or you can live in Ariel, you know, a big settlement, 25 minutes from Tel Aviv, where you can live in a villa, where the land is subsidized. So obviously a lot of people just move to Ariel. And that's not even mentioning the ultra-Orthodox, which today consist half of the settlers, and they don't care about politics. They just have 9 children in average, so they constantly need new places to live every generation. So at some point during the 90s, the government started establishing settlements for the ultra-Orthodox, and they become the main part of the, you know, demographic expansion of the settlers. If it weren't for them, by the way, then there would be probably less settlers living in the West Bank today than there were 15 years ago. Now, I'm making this distinction because while you have those people, and it doesn't even matter if it's the economic settlers, you know, people that just came here for the, you know, quality of life, people who do believe in the ideological meaning of living here, because here in South Hebron Hills, most of the settlements are ideological and religious. Still, the majority of them are what you could say call normative people. You could have, you know, we could have our disagreements with them being here, but in the end, they live here, they work in Jerusalem or in Sheva, they have their, I don't know, organic farming and whatever. In the end, they just live here. Now, at the same time, you have a small minority of people like you in our farm who use violence to attain their goal. They go down, for example, in here, they attack the shepherds on money, they poison their water holes, spread poison, and killed half their sheep. They go down with metal chains and critically injure Palestinians. It came to a point that there is constant presence of international activists in this village from an organization called CPT, Christian Peace Team. And they started escorting the shepherds here in the valley here, Haruba Valley, because of these non-stop attacks. On one of the occasions, gave cameras to small communities so they could document, those attacks, so they would have some kind of card, at least when it comes to the legal effort to put an end to this. So they started going down masked, like you can see on the picture on the maps, going with masks so they couldn't be recognized. And now, why do I, even though I said they're a small minority, I still insist on mentioning them. Because in the end, nobody is there to stop them. This is Area C, it's under the complete control of Israel. So the military is supposed to provide security for the people who live here. Actually, for example, there are small areas and they already mentioned this in Susia that there is a junior high, there is a school here. And the children, they have to walk from Tuba all the way to the village here. And they go on the road underneath Maon's farm. And these children were constantly attacked by the settlers that were ambushing them and throwing stones at those children. I'm talking about 10-year-olds. It came to a point that the military was ordered to escort those children on the way to school. In one of the occasions, the settlers came to attack. They saw the jeep. They decided that's not going to slow them down. They started throwing stones. One of the soldiers was hit in the face with a stone and fell unconscious. His friend got scared and shot one bullet in the air. For doing that, the soldier was interrogated by the military police for illegal use of his weapon. So if you wonder, first of all, you want to understand why the soldiers are not doing anything to stop the settlers from doing all this criminal behavior. It comes first of all from this. Every soldier here knows in the end who runs the show here, Your battalion commander, your officers, they answer to those guys. So you know that if you want, in the end, you become a very simple-minded person. Every soldier. The only thing that you care about is doing your job and going home once every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. There is a term in Israel called kastar. Basically means to cover your own ass. Excuse the language, but that's what it means, and that's the basic mindset of every soldier. You don't want to get in trouble with anybody, and you know that in the end the settlers are Israelis exactly like you. If you dare to raise a hand at a settler, you can get interrogated or court-martialed. When I was a platoon sergeant, in one of the occasions I was called to this hilltop next to Susia because I was told on the radio that there is a quarrel, a fight between settlers and Palestinian shepherds. Now when you get a call like this on the radio, you already know who's attacking who. Because if it was the Palestinian attacking, they wouldn't call it a quarrel, they would call it a terrorist attack. And then your approach would be completely different. When it's a quarrel, usually it means that the settler is the one who's attacking. And I got to this hilltop, and there was a group of settlers attacking a 70-year-old Palestinian shepherd and his daughter. And the law there, but I felt a little bit like a UN soldier. I had no idea what I'm supposed to do. I just stood in the middle, trying to separate them until my commanders came, declared the whole area as a closed military zone, and everybody has to go home. And when I say everybody, I mean the Palestinian, because obviously the settler doesn't care about doesn't care about the closed military zone. But like I said, this is not just about the practical understanding of how not to get in trouble. There is also a moral aspect to it. Like I said, when everything becomes black and white, when it's clear to you that you are here to protect the Israelis from the Palestinians, you have no idea what you're supposed to do when they change places. So you could say, and you as a soldier, you're constantly told, and that's why you have the police. You got a problem with Israel, you call the police. That's their job. So you call them, and they never show up. And when they do show up, after 2 hours, usually they do nothing. They sit here, chat with the settlers, chat with the soldiers, and go back. Even in cases here, like that there were footprints leading all the way up to my own farm, or there was documentation, video documentation of the aggressors. Usually the cases are closed due to an unknown perpetrator. That's usually the legal terminology. Or if somebody actually got arrested or detained. Usually he'll be released due to lack of interest in the public. That's another terminology that is being used here. If he is actually indicted, usually because he assaulted a police officer, which also happens here, or a soldier, which also happens here, then usually it will be the attorney, general attorney, would close the case. Now there used to be a lady called Judith Karp. She used to be another legal advisor to the Ministry of Law, to the department, to the Ministry of Law of like legal affairs, and she was documenting the way in which law is being upheld here towards Israelis during the 80s and the 90s, and she was constantly saying the law is not being upheld here. So, and she actually resigned after in '94, a settler doctor from Kiryat Arba went inside the mosque, went inside the Tomb of Patriarchs and massacred 29 Palestinians. She said, we knew it was coming, the police here is understaffed and they're not doing their job anyway. There is a human rights organization called Yesh Din. They've been documenting for the past 8 years to which extent the law is not being upheld here. It's relevant to violent offenses, but also to land grabs and other stories like this. So that's why I said it's important to mention this, even though it's a small minority. Because in the end, if the state is not doing anything to stop them from doing it, it becomes in many ways embedded in the bigger story of how we control this area. Because in some ways they are the subcontractors of the government. I mean, they're doing things, attacking the people of Tuwani, attacking the people of Susa, villages that the government doesn't want them to do anymore. So the only thing that they need to do to, I guess, support this cause is to step aside and look aside while the settlers become the subcontractors and doing it for them. That's why I'm saying that that's the my responsibility and the responsibility of every Israeli, because in the end, it's in many ways the government's policy. Now, one small matter, not that small, but I'll try and be brief so that we could start and head back to Jerusalem, is this distinction between the official settlements and the outposts. You know that official settlements like Maon and Carmel were established in the 80s with the planning of the government, and they had to find legal ways, like I said, you know, to declare it as a military zone and then as a state land, you know, allowing the establishment of a planned settlement. But since the 90s, actually, half the settlements today are outposts that were established by the settlers themselves. And the government is constantly saying, yeah, it's a problem for us also, we don't know what to do about it. So, another legal advisor of the government, called Talia Sasson, during the time that Netanyahu was prime minister, did a report to check who was funding all of this, because it was probably quite expensive to build a new settlement. And she found out that most of the money is first of all coming from the Ministry of Housing, the government, even though it doesn't have any planning. Some of the money is transferred to the Ministry of Defense through the Jewish agency that collects donations in the States from American Jews mostly, or other friends of Israel. And because the settlements are illegal according to the American law, so you can't get tax benefits for this donation, then it's done through the Jewish agencies, and basically that's why the money is laundered. If it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but if it was done by an individual, it would be considered as money laundering and you'll be sent to prison. But because it's being done by the State of Israel, then obviously this mechanism goes on until today. Now this is not where the story ends, because the military who says we're over politics, we don't care about the politics, we're just here to, you know, to be the hands of the policy. But every time there is a new settlement, they're saying, well, we are obliged to provide security to Israelis wherever they are. So if they establish an outpost, then immediately the military sends soldiers to protect it. And once there are soldiers there, then the military is saying we can't just let them stand in the dark. We need surrounding lighting to protect them. So they put a generator. They say they need to drink water, so they put a water pump. And we And then, without dealing with politics, the military, in a lot of the occasions, is the one who actually provides all the basic infrastructures to every new settlement. And that's how, in many ways, even though it's illegal outposts, they cannot get any more legal than that, because they get basically everything from the government. And as you can see now, during the last days, when it actually reaches the court, it's very clear on which side the government is. Now, I want to try and summarize everything and tell you how everything here comes into place. Because a lot of these things that I told you about, a lot of these phenomena, for example, this attempt to push those people that live in the firing zone, started in the 90s, at the same time like the peace negotiations started. And it might seem very unsensible. Why exactly when you're actually starting to talk about the future Palestinian state, it would suddenly become so important to push those people out? And actually it makes perfect sense. Because as long as nobody was talking about a Palestinian state, nobody actually cared where the Palestinians live, because it's all going to be Israel. But once there is the realization that there's going to be a Palestinian state, the only question which is still pending is what will be its borders. Now, let's say that Israel wants to annex the southeastern corner of South Hebron Hills, the area around 918 firing zone, the area, basically all the area from Road 317 that we can see here, going around, between Carmel and Maon, all this area, to annex it into Israel. What do you need? Now, we started in Jerusalem, and we said, and I mentioned that in the Israeli consensus, East Jerusalem Jewish neighborhoods like Gilo and Pisgat Ze'ev and all these big neighborhoods would never be evicted. For two reasons. First of all, because they're very big. And second, because there are Palestinians living in East Jerusalem, but there aren't Palestinians living, I don't know, in Gilo or in Pisgat Ze'ev. So you basically, in order to make annexation easier, you need to have two conditions against you. First of all, that there will be no Palestinians in the area that you wish to annex. And that's why from the 90s and on, it became very important to push those people out. So it started with the actual evictions, and then they changed tactic because of the courts, so it became not allowing them to build and blocking the roads and building the original separation wall, or planning the original separation wall to go over basically the road that again was supposed to mark the border. And when that didn't work out, to build a small barrier. And the settlers' violence is also part of it, because they are the ones who are actually the people that we saw, like we heard about, like Yaakov Talia in the Lucifer farm, or the people in Maon farm. If they actually manage to use violence and harassment to push those people that live in all those small communities, then you get what you were couldn't be in Palestinians, because they would give up and leave and go to live in Yatta. So that's one thing. And then there is the other condition. In order to make, I guess, an area likely to stay in under Israeli control, you need to create a settlement blocks. Because again, according to the Israeli consensus, you do not evict settlement blocks. Now, if you look on the map, you'll see that the settlements here, at least the big ones, Carmel, Maon, they're quite far apart, The next one after Maon is Susia, it's somewhere there. There is a big gap in between. But you want to get a settlement block. So what do? Try and imagine a line. From Carmel to Maon. From Maon to Maon Farm. From Maon Farm to Avihai. From Avihai, I'll tell you a little secret, there is another outpost afterwards called Mitzpeh Yair. And then it's Susia. And afterwards, after Susia, you have Yatir and Lucifer's farm. If you look on the maps, you'll see that they're actually creating a line which is parallel to the same road that we spoke about. If they basically close down this line, and there won't be any Palestinians living south of this line, then it makes it way easier to annex. Because the government will say, come on, there is a settlement, but only Israelis living on this line. And there are no Palestinians living south to it. It's a piece of desert. So why not? So in many ways, the heart of the military activity in this area revolves around the attempt to annex this piece of land. Now, some people, I don't know, people here in Avihai, but maybe even some people in Israel will say, well, we're just doing it the same way that the pioneers did, in the 40s, building like tiny settlements in one day to reshape the borders of Israel. And I will say, fine, as long as everybody knows that, as long as my parents from Haifa that sent me, to be a combat soldier here, would know that in the end this is not about their security in Haifa. It's about political ambitions to elect the president. That's what the only thing that we in Breaking the Silence are asking. That let's start by talking about the facts, about the truth. Because as long as you're just, going again and again over this mantra that, maybe this occupation is horrible for us, obviously for the Palestinians, but if this is what it takes in order to provide security, then fine. That's what most Israelis are saying, and it makes sense, because in the end everybody wants to live in security. But the problem is that most Israelis have no idea that their children are doing this. To be honest, most soldiers don't know even what they're doing here. Not just about being good Hasbara agents, just being good foreign relations agents for the country. It's about self-conviction, because people in Israel do believe that they gotta have a moral army. We want to have a moral society, and that makes me actually optimistic, because if I thought that Israelis don't care, then there wouldn't be a point in breaking the silence. But Israelis do care. It is important for them to feel moral. And they have to understand that this reality is immoral. It's immoral, first of all, because doing all these things, in order to shape borders is immoral. But it's more than that. Because a lot of Israelis believe that, these stories that I told you about, I don't know, beating up Palestinians, stealing in a checkpoint, going for no reason into a Palestinian town, going for no reason inside a Palestinian house, they have no idea that this is a part of the system, and that there is no way of changing it. Because first of all, that's the only way that you can control civilians under military occupation. You cannot do it. People from other countries, we give exhibits in other countries. I met British soldiers and Danish soldiers and American soldiers. Actually, I heard about the initiative of Winter Soldier. It's testimonies of American soldiers. It exists all the way. It's actually one of the inspirations that we got from Winter Soldiers, American soldiers testifying about the war in Vietnam, and now you have Winter Soldier about Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was hearing those stories and I said, my God, these are my stories. Because occupying soldiers are occupying soldiers. This is not because Israelis are like this or like that. It's because when you give an 18-year-old a gun and you tell him, don't trust these people, they are your enemy, and you only teach him how to fight, that's the way it's going to look like. There is no way around. And that's what we're trying to show the people, that this is not the moral reality. And we're hoping that if people realize this, first of all, that this is by definition immoral. These are not the rotten apples, this is the rotten system. And second, that in many ways this is not about their security, that they are being lied to. Then maybe it will take us one step further in actually trying to resolve this conflict. That's it. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions or comments, then that's the last chance.
How does the public react to Breaking the Silence?
Well, most of the public never heard about us.
Very affected.
I'm
how do you respond to people who bring up a security question, who say this is a security issue?
I bring them to South Avon Hills. No, seriously. I mean, that's a problem when you're trying to have like a civilized conversation over coffee with a friend and explain him. He only needs to say one word, security.
Yeah.
I need to take him for 4 hours to South Avon Hills to explain him how complex the reality here is. But most simply I say, if this is about security, then how come there are 500,000 settlers living in a
In other words, if it's not safe, why would they be living here? Is that what you mean?
Pretty simple and clear. Very good.
You said your aim was to stop occupation, but occupation stop when all the territories will be empty of the Israeli army. But to which frontier?
Again, that's not my place to decide at the end. For me, the occupation will end once the military will not be controlling civilians. Because there are various formulas to how you can attain that. Some will say just annex it, go ahead. Annex all of the West Bank, not just the south. Annex the West Bank. Give the Palestinians in Hebron an Israeli ID card. They would be able to vote for the parliament. And then you don't need to evict anybody. But that's not going to happen. Because the consensus, obviously, the majority of Israelis don't want to have a one-state solution. So it means a compromise. And that does mean that you need to talk about yourself. If it has to be on the millimeter, according to the 67 line, I don't know, maybe it doesn't. I do believe that they were very close to finding a formula when they were negotiating before that actually allowed some kind of solution that would have been acceptable by both sides. That's in the end the most important thing here. An agreed resolution. That's what I think. Where exactly the line is, this is not my place.
And it was, according to you,
Sorry.
what is the reason why the process of Oslo did stop?
There are a lot of reasons why Oslo failed. First of all, because they were, both sides here were not ready, I guess, for the final outcome here. For example, the division of the West Bank into 3 areas of control was supposed to be a temporary thing. The Palestinian state was supposed to be established already in 95, talking about 17 years ago. But when Netanyahu, took power after Rabin was assassinated, he basically put a freeze on it. He said, no, you have to wait. He said there was his famous claim, "Itnu yekablu, lo itnu, lo yekablu." If they give, they'll get back. If they don't give, they get nothing. So he was basically saying, no. First we have to wait to see that the Palestinians are actually fighting terrorism, that the Palestinians are actually ready to take control of the West Bank, and so on and so on. And in reality, it never happened until it blew up in our faces. But I think it's a two-sided thing, because I think both leaderships, even in 2000, when Arafat would and Barak would negotiate, they were not willing to give up very fundamental things that were needed in order to actually resolve the conflict. More land that the Israeli government was willing to give. And on the Palestinian side, it right, so let's go back. Thank you very much again. I'll give you